The stiletto heel is named for a stiletto dagger. That word on a woman's shoe in a glass case is a clue almost nobody follows. High heels today are the most feminine object in the modern wardrobe. Restrictive, ornamental, designed to make a woman slower. Everything about the shoe insists it has no business on a man's foot. And yet it was invented by men, for killing. A Persian archer stood in his stirrups to shoot backward at pursuers, and the heel on his boot was what kept him from falling. The shoe meant to make a woman slower was designed to keep a man standing while he killed. Centuries later, the most powerful king in Europe would codify that heel into law as a male privilege. The story of how that weapon became a cliché is stranger than the invention itself. The version most people know goes like this. Sometime around the 10th century, Persian cavalry needed a way to keep their feet planted in the stirrup while they drew a bow. The heel did that. It locked them in. It was, depending on who is telling the story, the first high heel, and it was a piece of war equipment. From there, the tale usually makes a jump. The heel crossed into Europe, where over a few centuries it drifted from the battlefield into the boudoir, and somewhere in that drift it became a woman's shoe. There is a second version, the one fashion magazines prefer. In 1533, a 14-year-old Italian girl named Catherine de Medici traveled north to marry the Duke of Orleans, who would later become King Henry II of France. She was small. His existing mistress, the older and taller Diane de Poitiers, attended the wedding. Catherine is said to have commissioned a pair of 2-inch heels for the occasion, designed to lift her above her rival. The 2-inch wedding heel story is one of the most repeated facts in fashion writing. It is also almost certainly apocryphal. No source from 1533 mentions the shoes. The wedding procession is documented in ambassadorial letters, in court correspondence, in the careful inventories of the period. None of it mentions heels. The story appears to be a later tradition rather than a contemporary record, and the precise date of its first appearance in print has not been confirmed. Both versions of the popular story share one feature. Both go directly from men and war to women and fashion. The middle of the story, the strangest part, is the part nobody tells. The Persian origin is real, even if it is messier than the telling. The earliest visual evidence attributed to Persia comes from 10th century fragments, including pottery excavated at Nishapur showing mounted figures. The connection to specific elevated footwear in the imagery is asserted by popular sources, but is not strongly attested in the archaeological literature. They show archers. They do not, however, prove that the heel was invented for archery, only that heels were being worn by riders in Persia at the time. The complication is the stirrup itself. Stirrups were a Chinese invention, appearing in the Jin dynasty around the 4th century, and they reached Persia along the Silk Road. Persia did not invent the equipment it is most often credited with. What Persia may have done is adapt the heel to a specific Persian style of riding. Parthian mounted archers, centuries before the Safavids, were famous for the Parthian shot, turning in the saddle to fire backward at pursuers. And they did it without stirrups at all, using high-cantled saddles for stability. The functional logic of the heel in the stirrup is also more complicated than the folk version admits. A raised heel can lock a foot in. It can also catch, pivot, throw a rider. The direct descendant of the Persian riding boot, the American cowboy boot, keeps its angled heel for a different reason. The heel stops the foot from sliding forward and through the stirrup when a roped calf hits the end of the line. It is a safety feature. It is there so the rider does not get dragged. What Persia actually sent to European courts, beginning with the Shah Abbas diplomatic mission that departed in 1599 under Anthony Shirley, was not the invention of the heel. It was a specific style of heeled riding boot, and a young Englishman wearing it. Robert Shirley, Anthony's younger brother, arrived at the Safavid court shortly after, served Shah Abbas the Great, and was made a general, one of the very few Englishmen to hold that rank under the Safavid Shah. Robert traveled back to European courts repeatedly between 1603 and 1615. At every stop, observers noted his dress. His Persian boots, with their distinctive elevated heels, were exotic, courtly, and unmistakably masculine. Aristocratic men in Prague, in Madrid, in Florence began to copy the look. Persia had not exported an invention, it had exported a costume. Between roughly 1620 and 1730, the high heel lived its second life, and it was the opposite of the story we now tell about it. It was the absolute apex of European aristocratic masculinity. Louis XIV of France, the Sun King, roughly 5'3" or 5'4" tall, vain, brilliant, and the most powerful monarch in Europe, codified the heel into law. By a sumptuary regulation widely dated to 1670, red heels were reserved for the nobility. The color was not a fashion choice. It was a class marker written into the dress code of the realm. The portrait that documents this most clearly is Hyacinthe Rigaud's 1701 state portrait of Louis XIV. The king stands in his coronation robes, sword at his hip, and on his feet are red heels that visibly elevate him above everyone else in the canvas. Every nobleman in the painting wears the same. Every servant, every attendant, every figure in the lower ranks of the room does not. The painting is a document of who is permitted to wear what. The logic was plain, and it has almost no modern equivalent. A heel proved you did not need to walk on dirt. Red proved you were powerful enough to crush enemies. Together they meant you were a man whose feet did not have to touch the ground for any practical purpose. Height was status made physical. Competing noblemen ordered higher heels. The taller the heel, the more elevated the man. For about 100 years, the heeled shoe in Europe was a male privilege enforced by royal regulation. Kings wore them. Generals wore them. The courtiers of Versailles wore them. The King of France wore them in red, and lesser men wore them in less forbidden colors. The Persian style Robert Shirley had smuggled into European imagination had been absorbed into the most powerful court on the continent and made into law. This is where the shoe lived as a masculine object. This is the part the popular story prefers not to look at. By the middle of the 18th century, the heeled shoe for men was already in retreat. The last absurd version of it belonged to a small group of young British aristocrats in the early 1770s, known as the Macaronis. They wore towering powdered wigs, tight striped trousers, small ornamented shoes with dyed heels, and they were mocked relentlessly. The term macaroni stopped meaning an Italian dish and became a punchline. Satirical prints of them sold by the thousand. What killed the heeled shoe for European men was not the macaronis. It was a philosophical shift. The Enlightenment was building a binary. The modern West has never quite shaken. Reason was male. Ornament was female. Anything impractical was, by definition, feminine. A man who wore impractical shoes was, by the new logic, less of a man. The macaronis were the visible symptom. The diagnosis was new. By the 1810s, the new masculine ideal was already taking shape. Beau Brummel, an English dandy and friend of the Prince Regent, had effectively invented the modern men's suit. Dark, sober, perfectly tailored, designed to disappear. Brummel did not write a manifesto against heels. He did not need to. His aesthetic, sober respectability over conspicuous ornament made the heeled shoe unfashionable for upper-class Englishmen within a generation. The French Revolution accelerated the broader shift, sweeping away the aristocratic sumptuary world that had sustained the red heel as a marker of class. The shoe did not change. 3 different meanings had already been written on top of it: cavalry regulation, royal decree, Enlightenment philosophy. The object was the same. The rules on top of it were not. The stiletto heel arrived in 1954, generally credited to the French designer Roger Vivier, working with Christian Dior. The stiletto took its name from a stiletto dagger. The connection is rarely made by anyone buying the shoe. But the linguistic memory is there, and the timing was pointed. Dior's new look had arrived in 1947, ushering women back into elaborate silhouettes after years of wartime utility. The stiletto in 1954 completed the silhouette with a heel tall and thin enough to be, technically, a weapon. In 1992, Christian Louboutin began painting the soles of his shoes red, an idea reportedly sparked by an assistant's red nail polish. Though Louboutin has acknowledged the historical echo of Louis XIV's red-heeled court. The red sole became a trademark after a long legal fight, and it is now one of the most recognizable luxury signals in the world. A 17th century male aristocratic regulation, absorbed into a 20th century feminine luxury product, is still being sold at full price. The cowboy boot is the last surviving mass use of the elevated heel in a masculine context. Its angled Cuban heel, whose name is often traced to early 20th century Cuban dance traditions, drawing on Spanish and flamenco roots, though the exact etymology is debated among footwear historians, is still standard on working ranches. The word stiletto on a label in a department store is a fossil of the aristocratic middle. So is the red sole. So is the dagger-shaped heel that still anchors the silhouette of a stiletto pump today. The shoe never changed. 3 different rules were written on top of the same object. A Persian cavalry convention absorbed from a Chinese technology, a French royal sumptuary regulation, an Enlightenment philosophy of gender. The stiletto in a woman's closet today is the last artifact of all 3. It carries the memory of a Persian archer turning in his saddle, a king painting his soles red to show he was above the ground, and a generation of men deciding that anything ornamental belonged to someone else. The heel never knew it was a weapon, a privilege, or a cliché. It just held whoever wore it up off the dirt. Which inversion surprised you most? The Persian war boot, the royal red heel, or the Enlightenment pivot? Drop it in the comments. New origin stories every day, so subscribe and the next one will find you.